This presentation will cover Section 2, the central nervous system, of Chapter 31, the nervous system. Let's begin with the brain and the spinal cord. Where does processing of information occur in the nervous system? The control point of the central nervous system is the brain, and the major areas of the brain include the cerebrum, the cerebellum, and the brainstem. Each of the major areas of the brain are responsible for processing and relaying information. In the book, the brain was compared to the central processing unit of a computer because their main task is to process information. Most organs in our body function to maintain homeostasis, as we previously learned, such as our kidneys removing waste, maintaining blood pH, and regulating the water content in our body, or even our pancreas, which regulates blood sugar levels. Our brains work themselves are constantly changing due to their interactions with the environment. The sensory experiences we may face change the patterns of neuron connections in the brain, and those stem cells in the brain produce new neurons throughout life. Many of these new cells originate in regions associated with learning and memory. Our brains are far from stationary, literally speaking, because they are highly flexible, reacting to and changing with the world around us. Most of the neurons that enter and leave the brain do so in a large cluster of neurons and other cells known as the spinal cord. The spinal cord acts as the main communication link between the brain and the rest of the body. It is a bit like a major telephone line that carries thousands of signals at once between the central and peripheral nervous systems. There are 31 pairs of spinal nerves that branch out from the spinal cord, connecting the brain to different parts of the body. Certain types of information are processed directly within the spinal cord, such as reflexes. A reflex is a quick, automatic response to a stimulus. In the top picture is an example of a reflex. The animation shows someone's finger touching a prick on a cactus. The strong pain stimulus then causes a sensory neuron to generate a nerve impulse. The nerve impulse is then carried by a sensory neuron to the spinal cord. In the spinal cord, the nerve impulse causes a signal to be sent directly to the motor neuron. The motor neuron stimulates the effector, or the muscle, causing a contraction. A similar example is displayed below. In this situation, a reflex hammer is used to test the patella tendon. The knee-jerk reflex is categorized as a monosympathetic reflex because there is only one synapse in the circuit needed to complete the reflex. The tap below the knee causes the thigh muscle to stretch. Information is then sent to the spinal cord. After line synapse in the ventral horn of the spinal cord, the information is sent back out to the thigh muscle that then contracts and pulls the leg away. In the first picture on the left, it's a division of the hemispheres. The right hemisphere is responsible for controlling the left side of the body and is the more artistic and creative side of the brain. The left hemisphere is responsible for controlling the right side of the body and is considered the more academic and logical side of the brain. In between the two hemispheres is a deep groove that divides the cerebrum. The hemispheres are connected by a band of tissue called the corpus callosum. The corpus callosum is responsible for connecting communication between both sides and transmitting neural messages. The second picture on the right is a visual of the different lobes of the brain. In the top left is the frontal lobe, which is a motor strip location, which aids in impulsivity, short-term memory, voluntary movement, social functioning, creativity, and expressive language. The parietal lobe is a sensory strip location which deals with perception, touch, such as pain and temperature, ability to draw, reading, writing, and calculations. The temporal lobe covers hearing, long-term memory, verbal and written recognition, cognition, receptive memory, music, and initiation of verbal. The occipital lobe is responsible for perception and vision. Take a minute to look at the picture of the brain and how it is divided into different sections, and how each section correlates with some function of the body. This slide shows the precentral gyrus as well as the postcentral gyrus. They are very important structures involved in executing voluntary motor movements as well as our senses. The largest region of the human brain is known as the cerebrum. It controls voluntary or conscious activities of the body. The cerebrum is divided into two hemispheres, the left and the right hemisphere. They are connected by a band of tissue known as the corpus callosum. Oddly enough, each hemisphere deals mainly with the opposite side of the body. The hemispheres are divided into regions called lobes. The lobes are named for the skull bones that cover them, and each of the different lobes have different functions. The cerebrum consists of two layers. The outer layer of the cerebrum is called the cerebral cortex, and it consists of densely packed nerve cell bodies known as gray matter. The cerebral cortex processes information from sense organs and controls body movements. White matter is the inner layer of the cerebrum, and its whitish color comes from bundles of axons and myelin sheaths. The axons may connect different areas of the cerebral cortex, or they may connect the cerebrum to the other areas of the brain, such as the brainstem. The limbic system is very important to the brain and has been linked to different structures, such as emotion, behavior, and memory. It also associates the brain's pleasure center, which is a region that produces a feeling of satisfaction or well-being. The thalamus and hypothalamus are found between the brainstem and the cerebrum. The thalamus receives messages from sensory receptors and releases the information to the proper regions of the cerebrum. Just below the thalamus is the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus is the control center for recognition and analysis of a number of functions, and it also helps to coordinate nervous and endocrine systems. A number of functions the hypothalamus controls include hunger, thirst, fatigue, anger, and body temperature. The second largest region in the brain is known as the cerebellum. Information about muscle and joints are sensory inputs that are sent to the cerebellum. Sensory information allows cerebellum to coordinate and balance actions of muscles. For instance, let's say you hit a golf ball. The cerebellum actually learns the movements and coordinates the actions of the scores of the individual's muscles when the movement is repeated. The brainstem is one of the most important parts of the brain because it connects the brain to the spinal cord. It is located just below the cerebellum and includes three regions: the midbrain, the pons, and the medulla oblongata. Each of the regions of the brain regulate the flow of information between the brain and the spinal cord. The brainstem does the work of keeping the body functioning even when you have lost consciousness due to sleep or injury.